Do you ever have those seasons as a parent where you feel like you're running full speed, doing a lot, but nothing's getting done? See, that was me and my wife's whole last year of 2025, where it just felt like we were barely keeping our heads above water. We had our fourth baby, we were getting 2 companies off the ground, and it just felt like the day would start in chaos with 4 boys, and the day would end with you working all the way up until bedtime. Your head hits the pillow, and still there's so much left to be done. And it's not necessarily that stressful feeling, you're not overly busy, it just feels like nothing's truly moving forward in the house. Now granted, I will admit that I joke that being a parent is like having little goblins that live with you, that as you go to do something or clean something or fix something, that the little goblins come out and in 5 or 10 minutes disrupt that. I recognize that's just the nature of having kids, of having dependents. But again, it's that unsettling feeling that when your head hits the pillow, that you can't get your brain out of 5th gear. You can't wind down, you can't relax, and that nothing else really truly gets done, even though you've done a lot. Well, there's actually a concept specifically for that of why we experience that as parents. If you've read David Allen's Getting Things Done, it's this idea of open loops. Now, what are open loops? Open loops are tasks that you have committed mentally to do that you haven't completed yet. Now, your brain kind of works in a way, or at least how we treat it, like a computer, but we do it kind of ineffectively. Meaning that a computer or your brain is really good at doing tasks, but it's not built really for storage, at least in the way that we use it. You see, every unfinished task sits in kind of what's known as your temporary storage or your RAM, meaning it's that active part of the machine. It's not sitting back there in storage. It is demanding attention. It is sitting at the forefront of task execution. So that means that whether or not you're looking at it, there's these things that are calling out to you in your brain of unfinished tasks, of things still waiting to be done. Maybe you feel this way with your inbox, your text messages. It's those notifications, but it's in your brain of things that are still needing to be resolved. And the reason is actually called the Zeigarnik effect. And it was made by Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik in the 1920s, because she noticed that with waiters, they had great memory, impeccable memory at incomplete orders, but they forgot completed ones almost instantly. That's because your brain keeps unfinished tasks at the forefront of your attention until they get completed. And parenting by nature creates dozens of these every single day, especially if you're acting passively. That's why you never feel mentally like you're off. Nothing is on fire, but it's just that constant low boil of being worn out and stressed. See, this year, it was different for my wife and I, where last year it was absolute chaos. This year, I feel like we're finally making strides, little by little, bringing peace back into our household. And it starts with a Saturday ritual. Well, first, it starts with communication. Both Savannah and I either text if one of us are very busy with one child or the next, with like nap times or something like that, or we come together and we talk through what are our expectations for the weekend, both individually and expectations as a couple. Then we outline and throw out, okay, this just completely isn't reasonable entirely. There's no worth talking about this right now. And then we come to an agreement to say, what are some 1 or 2 things that we can close? What are the loops that we can close, the tasks that we can complete every Saturday? And that could be a task as simple as 30 minutes to maybe an afternoon. That could be the thrift store donations that's been sitting in the car for 3 weeks. That can be the island that's become the drop zone. That can become the part in the loft where the kids always get to, but you're never actually able to figure out where all the things need to go and organization of that entire area. It could be that to-do list item, that honeydew that you started and then never completed. See, it's all those little things. And little by little, every single weekend, we've decided to knock out one of those things. And it just feels like we're gaining more and more and more momentum in bringing peace back into the house as we close more loops. And what's even more important than closing new loops is ensuring you don't open up anymore, or at least you're more intentional about it. For example, we think about this a little bit differently now, where this year we decided that we were going to pick up doing a garden bed, where last year we just knew we couldn't handle it. And we realized that, okay, while committing to do a garden bed is not only one big open task, it's probably 100 other sub-open loops, so to speak. And in that commitment, though, we recognize that our ideal is to eat organic food from our own yard if possible. And so while yes, we are committing to more open loops, just in the nature of gardening, we recognize that it's worth it to us because we are actively participating in something that aligns with our values. The thing that you don't want to do is passively just accept and open new loops. That's where you get that overwhelmed feeling all the time because nothing else gets done, but your brain is overwhelmed with all the things that still have yet to be completed. Maybe you can relate to this, but maybe you have one of those friends where every single weekend, it's like you can't get a hold of them. You can't hang out with them. Or maybe you are that friend because they're always booked every single weekend. They're at kids' practices and ball games and school events and traveling and this and that. And their weekends are entirely booked for 6 months. Why is that? Because they've passively accepted, or maybe it's that lifestyle and their values, to be busy. But for most people, it's just the passive acceptance of open loops that create more and more commitments to where you're overwhelmed. And we have to think through that intentionality with the commitments that we have for the things that we agree, even internally to ourselves, of what we want to complete. Because just like you don't want your schedule to own you, you want to own your own schedule, you also don't want your task list to own you, you want to own your task list. So if you're asking what is a pragmatic way to get started, it's not setting up the same ritual that we do. I would say just start super small. Either with the thing that's yelling at you the most, the open loop that it just keeps getting pushed off over and over again, or maybe it's something really approachable, something that would take you 15 or 20 minutes, but build momentum. Because as we make more space and as we clear out our garage and attic and parts of our house, it's also easier to keep all these things up and keep it moving and adding to the momentum of doing more and more. And that's, I feel like, a big reason why we've created so much more peace in our household, even though it's chaotic with 4 boys. It's just creating that momentum where the more that we clear out, the more that we make space for, the more attention that we can give to the next things, to where it's continuing to build. And that's why we're feeling more and more peace in our household. Again, we are not perfect. We have 4 young boys, so it's still chaotic. But I'm hoping that if you feel like you're overwhelmed, you feel like you're barely getting by, then I would really focus on what are the commitments that you put in your mind that are on low boil, that are trying to get your attention, to where maybe it's time to step back and take a season of no more open loops, no more commitments, until you make some headway on the existing ones.